All right, everyone. Hello. Welcome to my presentation. I'm so sorry that you can't see my face. I'm so sorry that I can't be there in person. I'm actually en route to Seattle right now, and I hope to be there very soon, hopefully this afternoon. Weather delays have set me back. But I want to thank this awesome panel for inviting me. Oksana, thank you for having us all to talk about some very important topics related to assessment. Today I'm going to be talking about evaluating the affordances of automated feedback for assessment of L2 writing. And as I proposed this topic, I thought, easy, I have this expertise and I'm really excited to share my knowledge. And then as I was grappling with the content, I was unleashing several theoretical questions that are really ones that I'm continuing to grapple with and I want to discuss here today. So these questions are really due to this explosion of technologies that are coming out these days, largely because of increasingly transdisciplinary and convergent research that's coming out of our field, but also advances in artificial intelligence and machine learning that have driven this omnipresence of new technology. But with AI and machine learning based tech, there's a lot of uncertainty. Uncertainties about how they actually contribute to language teaching, learning, and assessment, because I feel that the affordances that they provide are not theoretically or conceptually well described. And the developments vary greatly across technology platforms. So, if it's an automated feedback system, how they're developed or why they're developed differs. And that those differences or the intentions of the developers are not always clearly documented. And because of that, users, or not just because of that, but partially because of that, users are finding innovative ways to use tech beyond their intended uses. So, this circles back to the question of, so then what are the affordances of these techs? When it comes to digitalized assessments, this is really important for understanding affordances because it alludes to how the construct is defined. And construct clarity is important for understanding the validity of an assessment tool and the affordances that that tool can provide for assessment. Of particular assessment tools that are increasing in our discussion these days is automated feedback systems. They also are largely informed by AI and machine learning. And so we can see here, this is a timeline from Elena Kotos from the 60s to the 2013 era, and there's lots and lots of technologies, but the truth is that these technologies continue to emerge. They really came from an automated scoring perspective where we had summative assessment. These systems largely drive standardized testing. They have been integrated, some of them have been integrated into formative tools, traditional, I say here, because they look at sentence level feedback, feedback on linguistic form and style. And then we have the emergence of genre-based feedback, which is looking at specific genres, written genres, for a target audience and target purpose, like a technology that I'm going to be showing you later today, Dissemity. So these systems have actually received mixed reviews. These mixed reviews are largely due to limited transparency in how the construct is defined. Again, with AI and machine learning, this is understandable because the models are developed in the back end and things happened, and then in the end we have feedback, and then researchers say, how did this come about? Well, how this comes about, how the feedback emerges, has been rationalized based off of comparisons of that feedback and those measures to humans and to error coders. But the reality is that the users of that information are not limited to scores or teachers. There's the students, the users, the stakeholders are much broader, and so we should be bringing them into the validation of these systems. But that's hard because ultimately there's just little public information about how that research, the research about the constructs or how the constructs are measured and how it can be used for language assessment, it's a gray area. Let's just say that. So I brought Clippy along to help me to grapple with this big question, this question that I realize now is quite long, the question of how can we move towards a theorized perspective of digital affordances to adequately and appropriately evaluate potential uses of automated feedback for L2 writing assessment. That's specific to writing assessment because of the panel, but really it's hard to take assessment out of learning and teaching. So I think an affordance much broader eventually needs to be discussed. But what do we currently know about technology affordances? So the idea of affordances is not something new in our field. We've been talking about this for years. What do we mean? Where does it come from? Well, let's just give a little historical context. So Gibson actually brought the concept of affordances from a human perception perspective, the idea that there's interactions between the goal-oriented actor or the user, in our case, usually students, but sometimes teachers, and the object, so in our case, the technology. From a user experience, we can broaden this and talk about the real and perceived affordances. So what a user brings to that technology and the capabilities of that user could also drive the affordances. In our field, we have talked about this from the idea of affordance being the action potential and how that emerges as we interact with the environment, the physical and social world. So for example, in language MOOCs, I'm sorry I did not provide the reference here, but this great team talked about activity theory. So here is the activity theory triangle, and we can see the subjects and the objects interacting with these mediating factors that contribute then to the outcome. I think that this ecological perspective is largely the direction that we should be going. Even closer to what I'm talking about today is the idea of this technology-aided formative assessment and the affordance model that Hong and colleagues have suggested. Now, this model is even closer in line with what I'm talking about today, but it's limited to teachers' role in the assessment process. And they don't say that teachers are the only ones. That's just what their study was about, and it definitely needs to expand to the entire ecological model. So that helps me to narrow down my question. To what extent have affordances theories extended to the study of automated feedback systems for L2 writing assessment? Well, the truth is we haven't really seen a lot here, but we can begin to make inferences about how the affordances can be thought of ecologically in a dynamic way. For AES, the affordances are limited. Right? They are there the feedback is there to provide holistic, summative assessment of grading, certification, accountability, for example, and then they offer a score description. Done. That is the intended affordances of these technologies. But as we expand to AWE, the affordances also expand. So here's from Huang's study from the teacher's perspective, assessment affordances expand exponentially in these different ways, for example, reducing assessment workload, facilitating the grading process, diagnosing students' learning, etc. From a teacher's perspective, there's actually quite a bit of positive evidence of the positive affordances. From a learner perspective, we begin to see more concerns, but still some positive affordances. So here, identifying and correcting grammatical errors and lexical appropriateness, improving accuracy, evaluating multiple metrics quickly, rapidly. We love that aspect. And then enabling provision of feedback throughout the writing process. Concerns, though, are when you get this feedback, it can cause disfluencies in students' processes, and there is really no real-time interaction with the teacher, which that human-centric perspective is oftentimes lost. So, when it comes to the affordances of genre-based AWE, it's a big question because there have been few studies that have investigated the perceived and intended affordances of genre-based AWE. So, for example, the Research Writing Tutor is one such technology, and we have seen that it does provide insightful descriptions of rhetorical patterns and variations in disciplinary discourse, specifically for peer-reviewed journal articles, and thus it enables this enhancing genre and corpus-based teaching of rhetorical conventions. But like I said, there still needs to be more work, and so I've been grappling with how does my technology disseminate address affordances or allow affordances to emerge. So, Dissemity is a genre-based AWE system that also looks at peer-reviewed journal articles. It provides feedback on goals and strategies, otherwise known as moves and steps, from a ESP genre perspective. And it does so as students are analyzing published works in their field, so feedback on their reading process as they code for goals and strategies, but also provides feedback on their writing process. So how are they able to conceive of these rhetorical goals and strategies in their writing? I'm just going to provide a little tiny video clip of what users see when they come into the system as like a tutorial about the system to help you understand the lead-in to the actual results.
You can access all modules from the left side menu. The Learn module is where you will gain valuable insights into the goals and strategies used to construct a research manuscript. Be sure to take notes and complete the quizzes after summary slides to check your understanding. From there, use the Analyze module to manually analyze the argument structure of writing in your field. This is a way to enhance your critical reading skills and visualize through color the patterns found in published writing in your discipline. Start with the sample analysis task by simply clicking on each sentence and labeling the sentence based on your knowledge you obtained in the Learn module. Dissemity will provide you feedback along the way. As you analyze published works, we encourage you to save language templates in your Roundup module. But be careful, we do not want you to save ideas from published researchers unless you adequately cite their work. Instead, we would like you to find universal language that helps researchers talk to other researchers, like the glue that keeps a story cohesive. You'll learn more about this in the Learn module, so again, start there. The Explore module will help you explore thousands of research articles to discover additional templates and language use patterns. Finally, as you work through Dissemity, you will come to the Write module. You can use this module at any time to begin writing. Stay tuned because some awesome features for this module are currently being developed, including automatic color coding and feedback features.
So the automatic color coding and feedback features are actually something that we're implementing this summer that students have begun to work with on our prototype side, so we're really excited about that. But that's still just a feature, right? The feedback is a feature, and we have many different features in this entire Dissemity learning platform, but what we're interested in is how those features, specifically the automated feedback, allow for this goal-oriented action, the affordances. So what we did is a small pilot study. It was 3 weeks long. We had 2 groups. One group was a drafting group, one was a learning group. The drafting group came into the lab and they started writing an introduction section. And then the second session, they started watching the videos and working through the tasks and feedback. The learning group started with Dissemity and then later did the drafting, and then they revised at the same time. The students that were part of this study were from graduate programs in my university, where they were taking either a seminar in second language writing and technology or a manuscript publication course because they needed to have data that was analyzed so that they had arguments to display in their introduction section. They were randomly assigned to one of the 2 groups, and before the study, they were asked to collect and summarize a corpus of at least 10 articles on their independent topic, and then analyze data on their topic so that they had take-home messages. The study overall was part of a broader study, but the critical question that we were thinking about here was, in what ways can genre-based AWE from Decemity support students' autonomous assessment of their writing process? So while they were in these classes, we brought them into the lab to work on their papers alone using the feedback and learning from Decemity. So when they came into the lab, we hooked them up with the eye tracker. We also had some back-end analytics as backup. And then we did simulated recalls using the eye tracking as the stimulus. And we were looking specifically for this affordances aspect at the challenges and uses or ease of using the feedback features, and then what and why the choices were made due to use or non-use. Now, I'm going to provide you just really preliminary data because this is not the focus of this presentation, but I want you to see how even this preliminary data is starting to show or surface some interesting affordances that we can't ignore. The first one, not only have I learned strategies for how to write a publishable manuscript, but the feedback in Decemity, for example, corpus exploration and article annotation, helped me to digest the strategies and implement them in my own work. The next one, I love Decemity as I found the goals and strategies most helpful for recognizing weaknesses in my own writing. And the last one, this was exactly what I needed to understand the research process. So as I continue grappling with this feedback or evaluation from the students about the feedback, it makes me think about, well, how do I interpret the affordances that they are suggesting here? And so this is part of what I have been saying during this presentation. To give you a closer look at the potential affordances, this is one student, Nolan. He found different affordances all the way from the learning process to the revising process, such as gaining awareness of writing conventions, self-assessing and self-initiating revisions, utilizing learning content for knowledge building and increasing strategies for knowledge transfer, and then organizing content. I just want to provide you an audio clip of what he says.
So I raced a lot, moved a lot, and then where I wanted to go back and look at some videos specifically about claiming centrality and justification, because I kind of have two parts that I was working with. One is the centrality claim about feedback and the importance of feedback in computer-mediated environments. And then I needed to claim centrality about, or I guess justification, the need to study feedback that is both oral and written within Zoom.
So what we see in Nolan's comment, he was talking about centrality and justification. These are strategies that he learned about in the system. And what we find from his eye tracking data is that he moves back and forth from the learn module, where he's understanding these concepts, to the analyze module, where he's getting feedback about how he assesses these strategies, to the write module, where he's actually performing these strategies in his writing. And he notices that he needs to bring these two strategies in particular more to the forefront of his writing based off of his analysis of work in his field and the learning of the videos. So that's really neat affordances that we need to delve into deeper. So what does this mean? I think that overall, there has been hesitancy about automated feedback, and rightfully so. I think that this is mainly or partially due to users' lack of awareness of what affordances of assessment tools are. This is not on their part. This is not due to them. I think it's due to us, researchers, to developers, in being more transparent of what these technologies can provide for this goal-oriented task. And since there are so many automated feedback studies emerging, there really is a need to categorize affordances in a way that's in relation to SLA and our understanding these potential uses, because otherwise it gets really fuzzy. There's just so much going on and so many perspectives theoretical perspectives especially, or I guess there's really not enough, but there are different lenses to which these studies are being conducted, and we need to find a unitary approach to categorizing these affordances, which I suggest being done through an affordance theory for automated feedback systems for L2 writing assessments. And this really should be reflective of an ecological perspective. This is because there's so much dynamic interplay of variables in this learning ecology. So it's important that to acknowledge those diverse variables, even looking at like dynamic systems theory to do so would be great. But doing that without overshadowing lasting concerns about automated feedback. So, for example, I already talked about construct representation and its impact on appropriate uses of assessment tools, but also social, cultural, ideological influence that can be exerted on users. So, when they are asked to address certain feedback, that feedback is oftentimes a representation of a writing task from dominant group norms. And our students, our users, may not be from that dominant group. So we do need to bring in their perspectives, their perceptions of uses and affordances of these tools as well. With that said, I'm into discussing this further to continue grappling with what a theorized perspective would look like. If you have any questions, comments, or you want my list of references, please email me. I would love to hear what you have to say. And then finally, before I leave, this is just a plug. This is totally random, but not, because here we go. Calico has our book series coming out. The proposals for the 2024 issue is July 15th. Please submit and contact me about this as well. Thank you all.